My brother coerced my girlfriend Jane into intimacy with him for 3 months by menacing her job with damaging rumors. So, I dispatched one screenshot. That occurred 2 years past. He's now serving 25 years while our parents reside in a small condo, having forfeited everything in the civil lawsuits. You know that gut-wrenching feeling when your entire world just shatters into a million pieces right before your eyes? That's exactly what happened the day I walked in on my girlfriend and my own brother. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was the ultimate act of sabotage, the culmination of a lifetime of pain, and honestly, it made me wonder, how far would you go for justice when your own blood has become your worst enemy? My brother, he was always my parents' golden child. From the moment he arrived, just 1.5 years after me, he was their miracle baby. Doctors only gave him a 5% chance of making it, and that made him special. Me? I was just there. The forgotten firstborn, the mistake. Growing up, their favoritism was a gaping wound, and what made it worse was their absolute refusal to acknowledge it. He literally got a car for his 13th birthday, and my dad started teaching him to drive it. Meanwhile, he'd steal my stuff, knowing he'd never get reprimanded. I remember this one time. I'd spent weeks that summer, busting my butt, mowing lawns for people, saving up a few $100. Real money to a kid. My brother found it. And he spent most of it at the mall, buying himself new clothes. I was absolutely furious. We got into a fist fight, which I won, by the way. He went crying to our parents, and before I could even open my mouth to explain, I was grounded for the rest of the summer. The worst part? Even after I told them what he did, they just flat out didn't believe me. My mom swore up and down that she gave him the money to go to the mall. She literally covered for him. It was soul-crushing. Needless to say, my family and I were never close. I'm 19 now, he's 18. I bolted the second I turned 18, found my own place, got a job. My brother? Still living rent-free, bill-free at home, not a job in sight. For a long time, I kept them at arm's length. Low contact, you know? I wasn't entirely opposed to fixing things someday. But then, a few months ago, something happened. Something that severed every single tie I had left. My ex-girlfriend, Jane, and I had been together since just before my 18th birthday. She was my first love, and I fell hard. We met at the gym, hit it off, and over time, my feelings for her just grew incredibly strong. We went on ice cream dates, carnivals, we talked about our future. She was my future, and I was hers. Jane knew all about my messed up home life, how my family treated me. Which is why what she did, it hurt so much more. She was the one part of my life my family couldn't control, and they hated that. Looking back, my parents and my brother always needed to control every aspect of my life, even who I hung out with. And they absolutely detested Jane. Why? Because Jane taught me how to stand up for myself. Because of her, I started saying no to my parents, not giving in to their demands or my brother's. They loathed her for empowering me. They never even met her, of course. I never wanted to introduce her to them, and they seemed perfectly happy to not meet her. My brother, though? He was very interested in Jane. He'd seen pictures of her on my phone, on social media, and he'd routinely make these disgusting jokes, these crude remarks, just to get under my skin. One time, he said he'd pull her blonde hair till it came off, and she looked like a cancer patient so he could, nut on her shiny head. We got into a brutal brawl over that. Of course, our parents broke it up and took his side. I moved out shortly after. Jane and I dated happily while I maintained minimal contact with my parents. But I should have known. There was no way they, or my brother, would let me live a normal, happy life without their interference. About 8 months after moving out, 11 months into our relationship, I walked into Jane's apartment to surprise her. And that's when I saw them. Her. And my brother. Right there. I froze. My entire world imploded. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, was with the person who had made my life hell. I kicked my brother out right then and there. He refused to leave, of course, until I threatened to call the police. He finally stomped out. I stayed with Jane, not to forgive her, but to understand. She cried. She begged for forgiveness. But I just needed to know why. How could she do this to me? She revealed that my brother had been messaging her for a while. At first, she'd turned him down, never told me because she thought it was no big deal. But he kept trying his luck. And when that didn't work, he resorted to threats. He told her he'd spread nasty rumors about her, completely ruin her, unless she gave in. Terrified and scared, she agreed. The affair began. She swore she had no emotional attachment, that she was just worried for her safety and her reputation. She showed me their conversations. It was all there, damning proof. She cried in my arms, begging for a second chance. I told her I understood her fear, that my brother was a monster. But I couldn't forgive her. She could have taken screenshots, she could have come to me, done anything but engage. She chose to let him have his way. With a heavy heart, I told her we were done. Naturally, I confronted my parents. And, to absolutely no one's surprise, they called me a liar. My brother denied everything. And they believed him. That day, something in me snapped. My mind shifted from hurt to a singular, burning desire for revenge. I texted Jane. Asked her if she could send me those screenshots. I told her I was going to destroy him. That he deserved to face consequences. She sent them. For the last few months, I'd been keeping tabs on my brother. And the perfect opportunity for revenge finally arose. He'd found a new girlfriend. I have no idea how. All I'd need to do was text her those screenshots. His relationship would be ruined. And I could take it a step further, post what he did publicly. My gut told me that pressuring a girl for intimacy by threatening to spread rumors? That sounded like a pretty big legal problem. Even if it wasn't, his social standing would be annihilated. I knew I was going to do it. I just didn't know when. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at those screenshots Jane had sent me. My thumb hovered over the compose button. Dylan's new girlfriend's profile was right there, one tap away from learning the truth. I got up from my couch, pacing my tiny studio apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No one here to steal my things, no one to blame me for something I didn't do. I grabbed a glass of water, trying to calm my racing heart. The screenshots were damning. Dylan started messaging Jane just 2 months into our relationship. At first, flirty, testing the waters. Jane's responses were polite, firm. She wasn't interested. She loved me. But then the tone shifted. Dylan got aggressive. He knew where she worked, where she lived. He'd tell everyone she was sleeping around if she didn't give him what he wanted. I scrolled more. Jane had begged him to stop, told him she'd tell me everything. That's when Dylan played his trump card. He reminded her. Our parents always took his side. I'd never believe her over him. They'd convince me she was lying. The worst part? He was probably right. If Jane had come to me then, would I have believed her? Or would my parents have gotten into my head? My hands shook. I put the phone down, walked to the window, looked out at the street. It was getting dark. People were heading home, normal people with normal families. Not this mess. I thought about Dylan's new girlfriend, Catherine. Her social media showed a kind girl who worked at a bookstore. Always smiling, usually with a book or coffee. She had no idea. I picked up my phone again. Catherine's profile. A photo from yesterday. Her and Dylan at a restaurant. His arm around her. That same smug smile. 3 months with this amazing guy, the caption read. 3 months. He moved on fast after destroying my life. Of course he had. Why would he feel guilty? In his mind, he'd won. He'd taken what was mine, used it, and discarded it. I went back to messages. Typed, "Hi, Catherine. You don't know me, but there's something you need to know about Dylan." Too vague. Deleted. Tried again. "Catherine, I'm Dylan's brother. I have evidence he blackmailed my ex-girlfriend into sleeping with him. You deserve to know." Better, but still not quite right. Deleted. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. My blood ran cold. It was Dylan. "Heard you've been asking about me and my girl. Mind your own business, big brother." How did he know? I hadn't contacted anyone. Then it hit me. He must have seen me looking at Catherine's profile. Her account wasn't private, neither was mine. He'd been watching me the same way I was watching him. Another text, "You already lost Jane. Don't make me take anything else from you." The threat was clear. But what else could he take? I'd cut ties with our parents. There was nothing left connecting me to that family. Then I realized. He wasn't talking about things. He was talking about me. My job. My reputation. The life I'd built away from them. I called Jane. She picked up on the third ring. Kai. Her voice was quiet, uncertain. Dylan knows I have the screenshots. He just texted me. Silence. Then, what are you going to do? I don't know. I want to tell this girlfriend, but you're scared of what he'll do, Jane finished. Yeah, I get it. I was scared too. That's how he operates, Kai. He finds your weakness and exploits it. We talked for a few more minutes. Jane was seeing a therapist, dealing with the trauma. She still felt guilty. Before we hung up, she said something that stuck with me. Whatever you decide to do, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Don't let him turn you into someone you're not. After the call, I just sat there. Justice? Or revenge? Did it even matter? Catherine deserved to know. Other girls deserved a warning. But I also wanted to hurt him the way he'd hurt me. I decided to sleep on it. Maybe a clearer head in the morning. But lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about all the times Dylan had gotten away with it. The stolen money, the fights where I got blamed, our parents always taking his side. Now he'd escalated to blackmail, coercion. And he was still getting away with it. The next day at work, I could barely focus. I worked at a hardware store, stocking shelves. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills. My manager, Nicholas, noticed I was distracted. Asked if everything was okay. Just tired, I said. During my lunch break, I sat in my car, pulled up the screenshots again. That's when I saw something I'd missed. In one of Dylan's messages to Jane, he'd mentioned other girls. You're not the first to play hard to get, he'd written. They all come around eventually. My stomach churned. How many had he done this to? How many had given in? How many kept quiet out of fear or shame? I thought about the police. What evidence did I really have? Screenshots could be faked. Jane might not want to get involved in a legal battle. And my parents? They'd hire the best lawyers, make me look like the bad guy. That evening, another text from Dylan. This time, a photo. My hardware store, taken from across the street. The message was loud and clear. He knew where to find me. That was it. I'd had enough. I opened Catherine's messages. Attached the screenshots. But before I could type anything, my phone rang. My mother. Kai, what is this nonsense about you harassing your brother? Her voice, sharp, accusatory. I'm not harassing anyone, Mom. He says you're stalking his girlfriend, threatening to spread lies about him. Of course. Dylan had already started spinning his narrative. They're not lies, Mom. I have proof that I don't want to hear it, Kai. You've always been jealous of your brother. First you make up stories about him stealing your money, and now this. When will you grow up? I hung up. There was no point. She'd made up her mind years ago. I looked back at my phone. The message to Catherine was still there, unsent. My finger hovered. Once I did this, there was no going back. Dylan would retaliate. My parents would cut me off completely. Not that it mattered much anymore. But then I thought about Jane, how scared she must have felt. The other girls Dylan mentioned. Catherine, oblivious to the monster she was dating. I typed out a message to go with the screenshots. Catherine, I'm Dylan's brother, Kai. I'm sending you these because you have a right to know who you're dating. Dylan blackmailed my ex-girlfriend into sleeping with him by threatening to spread rumors about her. These are their conversations. I'm not asking you to believe me, just to read these and make your own decision. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I read it over. 3 times. Then, before I could change my mind, I hit send. It showed as delivered. Then read. My heart hammered. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then Catherine started typing. The indicator appeared and disappeared. Finally, a response. Is this real? Yes, I replied. You can contact my ex, Jane, if you want to verify. I can give you her number if she's okay with it. More typing. Then, I need time to process this. I understood. Told her to take all the time she needed, and I was sorry she had to deal with this. Then I put my phone down and waited for the inevitable fallout. It didn't take long. Within an hour, Dylan was calling. I didn't answer. He called again and again. Then the text started coming. You're dead to me. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. I'm going to ruin you. I screenshotted every single threat. If he was going to try and ruin my life, I'd have evidence. My parents called next. Both of them. I didn't answer. I was done trying to explain myself to people who would never believe me. The next morning, pounding on my door. Through the peephole, Dylan. Face twisted with rage. I stayed silent, hoping he'd leave. He hammered for 5 minutes, then stormed off. My hands trembled as I watched him disappear. At work, Nicholas pulled me aside. Kai, there's been a complaint filed against you. Someone called corporate claiming you've been harassing customers, making threats. My stomach dropped. Dylan had already started. Look, Nicholas continued, I know you're a good worker, but I have to follow protocol. You're suspended pending investigation. I cleaned out my locker in a daze. This job was my lifeline, my independence. Without it, my savings would be gone in 2 months. As I walked to my car, I saw it. My father's truck. He was sitting inside, watching me. I drove home, taking a different route, checking my mirrors constantly. My phone had been buzzing. Non-stop from blocked numbers. Messages from newly created social media accounts, ranging from threats to accusations that I was a liar and a stalker. Catherine hadn't responded since last night. I wondered if Dylan had gotten to her, convinced her the screenshots were fake, or if she'd just decided it wasn't worth the drama. I couldn't blame her either way. That afternoon, Jane called. In tears. Kai, someone posted my photos online. Old pictures from my social media, but edited to look inappropriate. They're everywhere. Tagged with my full name and workplace. My blood boiled. Dylan was making good on his original threats, punishing her for giving me the evidence. I'm so sorry, Jane. This is my fault. No, she said, her voice firm despite the tears. This is Dylan's fault. I'm filing a police report. I don't care what your parents think anymore. After we hung up, I started documenting everything. Every threat, every fake account, every incident. If Dylan wanted war, I'd give him one. But I'd do it smart, not reckless like he expected. The next few days were hell. My landlord called. Someone reported suspicious activity, claiming I was dealing substances. My car tires were slashed overnight. Someone called my bank claiming identity theft, freezing my accounts. Each attack was calculated to destabilize my life, without leaving Dylan's fingerprints. I crashed on a coworker's couch, too paranoid to stay at my apartment. While there, I finally got a message from Catherine. We need to talk. Can we meet? We met at a coffee shop downtown. I arrived early, chose a seat with a clear view of both entrances. Catherine showed up, exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. I broke up with him, she said, without preamble. The night you sent those screenshots, he denied everything. Said you were crazy jealous. But I could tell he was lying. Relief washed over me. At least one person saw through his manipulation. He got scary when I told him it was over. Started yelling, throwing things. I had to call my roommate. She paused, stirring her coffee. He's been calling nonstop, showing up at my work. I'm thinking about getting a restraining order. You should, I said. Document everything. He's dangerous when he doesn't get his way. She nodded, then pulled out her phone. There's something else. After I left him, other girls started reaching out to me. Girls who dated him before me. She showed me message after message. Young women sharing similar stories. Manipulation, threats, coercion. Dylan had been doing this for years. We need to stop him, Catherine said. I've been talking to some of the others. We're thinking about going to the police together. Would Jane testify? I think so. She's already filing a report about the photos he posted. Catherine's eyes widened. He's still harassing her? I explained everything that had happened since I sent her the screenshots. Her face grew paler with each detail. Kai, you need to be careful. One of the girls who messaged me, her ex-boyfriend tried to warn her about Dylan. He ended up in the hospital with a broken jaw. Dylan was there, but somehow there were 3 witnesses who swore Dylan was across town when it happened. My blood ran cold. My parents' money and influence ran deeper than I'd thought. They'd cover for Dylan no matter what. Over the next week, I stayed mobile, couch surfing. I managed to get my bank accounts unfrozen, but work wouldn't reinstate me until the investigation was complete. Every day brought new challenges. Fake dating profiles with my photos. Calls to friends' employers making accusations about me. Even a fraudulent lease application that nearly got me sued. Then Jane called with news. The detective wants to meet with you. They're taking the case seriously, especially with multiple victims coming forward. I met Detective Sarah Park at the police station. She was thorough, asking detailed questions about Dylan's history. I provided all the documentation I'd collected, including the recent threats and harassment. Your brother's been careful, she said, reviewing the evidence, but patterns are emerging. We're building a case, but it takes time. As I left the station, I saw it again. My father's truck, parked across the street. This time, both my parents were inside. My mother was crying. My father just stared at me with undisguised hatred. That night, at another friend's place, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Kai, it was my mother. Her voice thick with tears. Please, you have to stop this. You're destroying our family. Dylan destroyed our family, I said quietly. You just refuse to see it. He's your brother. He made some mistakes, but sending him to jail. How could you? How could you enable him for 18 years? How many girls has he hurt while you looked the other way? Those girls are lying. They're just after our money. Dylan told us everything. How you're orchestrating this whole thing because you're jealous. I laughed bitterly. Of course he did. And of course, they believed him. Come home, she pleaded. We'll work this out. Your father will help you get your job back. We'll pay for therapy. Whatever you need. Just stop this vendetta. It's not a vendetta, Mom. It's consequences. Something Dylan's never faced before. If you don't stop this, you're no longer our son, she said, her voice hardening. We'll cut you off completely. No inheritance, no family events, nothing. You'll be alone. I've been alone since Dylan was born, I said. At least now I'm free. I hung up and blocked her number. The pressure intensified. Dylan must have realized his usual tactics weren't working because he got sloppy. He showed up at my friend's apartment, demanding to know where I was. When my friend threatened to call the police, Dylan punched him. This time, there were security cameras. This time, he couldn't claim to be elsewhere. He was arrested that night. My parents bailed him out immediately, but the damage was done. The assault charge, combined with the mounting evidence from multiple victims, painted a clear picture. Catherine organized a support group for Dylan's victims. 7 women showed up to the first meeting. 7. And those were just the ones brave enough. They shared their stories, their trauma, their anger. Some had been threatened into silence for years. Others had tried to report him but were dismissed or discouraged by my family's influence. Detective Park attended one of these meetings, taking statements. The case was growing stronger by the day. Local media picked up the story, though my parents' lawyers were working overtime to suppress coverage. I finally returned to my apartment, installing new locks and a security system. The harassment decreased since Dylan's arrest, though I still received occasional anonymous threats. Nicholas called to tell me the investigation at work had cleared me, and I could return whenever I was ready. But I wasn't the same person who'd been suspended. The constant stress, the paranoia, the betrayal from my family, it had changed me. I was harder now, more cautious. I'd learned to document everything, trust carefully, always have a backup plan. One evening, stocking shelves at work, a woman approached me. She looked familiar. You're Kai, right? Dylan's brother. I tensed, ready for another confrontation. But her expression was sad. I'm Amy. I dated Dylan in high school. I never told anyone what he did to me. I was too scared, too ashamed. But seeing all these other girls come forward, I wanted to thank you. You gave us a voice. She left before I could respond, but her words stayed with me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. For all the girls Dylan had hurt while my parents looked the other way. The trial date was set for 3 months out. Dylan's lawyers pushed for a plea deal, but the prosecutor was confident. My parents hired the best defense money could buy, but even they couldn't make 7 victims disappear. I met with the prosecutor to prepare my testimony. She warned me Dylan's lawyers would paint me as a jealous brother seeking revenge. They'd bring up every fight, every complaint about favoritism. They'd try to discredit me and the victims. Let them, I said. The evidence speaks for itself. Life slowly returned to a new normal. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts, rebuilding my savings. I started seeing a therapist. Some days were harder than others, especially seeing families shopping together, parents treating their children equally. Catherine and I became friends. She was stronger than I'd thought, a fierce advocate. She started law school applications, inspired to help other women. Jane was healing too. The photos Dylan posted were taken down. She'd moved to a new city for a fresh start. We kept in touch. She was proud of me for standing up to Dylan, even though it cost me my family. 1 month before the trial, a letter from my father. No return address, but I knew his handwriting. Inside, a check for $50,000 and a brief note. Take this and disappear. Drop the charges. This is your last chance to be smart. I photographed the letter and check, sending them to the prosecutor. Witness tampering, attempted bribery. Add those to Dylan's growing list. The next day, my apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen. Everything destroyed. Furniture smashed, clothes shredded. Spray painted on the wall, liar. The police found nothing useful. Dylan had an alibi. With his lawyers. But I knew. This was his style. Using others to do his dirty work. I moved in with Nicholas temporarily. My manager had become protective, offering support I'd never received from my own family. You're like the son I never had, he told me one evening. And you're doing the right thing, no matter how hard it gets. 2 weeks before the trial, another woman came forward. Older, in her 30s. She dated Dylan when he was 16. Her story was the worst yet. He'd threatened to hurt her younger sister if she didn't comply. She kept silent for over a decade, carrying that trauma alone. Her testimony would be crucial. It established a pattern going back years. This wasn't a phase or a mistake. This was who Dylan fundamentally was. My parents made one last attempt, through their lawyer. This time, $100,000 and a written apology if I convinced the victims to drop charges. The lawyer stressed it was generous. I declined. No amount of money could undo the damage. No apology could erase years of enabling. The weekend before the trial, I visited Jane. She was doing better, seeing someone new. I'm proud of you, she said. I know this cost you everything, but you did what I couldn't. You stood up to him. We all stood up to him, I corrected. You, Catherine, all the other women. I just lit the match. She smiled sadly. Your parents don't deserve you. No, I agreed. But I'm building a new family. People who actually care about me. When I returned, a crowd outside the courthouse. Media had picked up the story despite my parents' efforts. Local Golden Boy faces multiple assault charges, one headline read. Pattern of abuse hidden by prominent family, another. Dylan's mugshot was everywhere. He looked different. Not the smug, entitled brother. He looked scared. For the first time, he was facing real consequences. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. Running through my testimony, the evidence, all the ways his lawyers would try to discredit me. But underneath the anxiety, something else. Relief. Win or lose, I'd finally broken free. My phone buzzed with messages of support. Catherine, Jane, Amy, coworkers, friends I'd made since leaving home. I'd lost my biological family, but I'd gained something better. People who valued truth over blood, justice over comfort. As dawn broke, I got dressed in my only suit. Nicholas had helped me pick it out, insisted on paying. You need to look professional, he'd said. Show them you're not the jealous, unstable brother they'll paint you as. I arrived early, avoiding the media circus. Inside, I saw my parents. For the first time in months. My mother had aged years. My father looked at me with such hatred, I had to turn away. Dylan sat at the defense table, flanked by 3 expensive lawyers. He'd lost weight. His golden boy looks faded. When our eyes met, I expected anger, defiance. Instead, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. The prosecutor nodded as I took my seat. The other victims sat together, a united front. Catherine squeezed my shoulder. Jane gave me an encouraging smile. As the judge entered, called the court to order, I thought about everything that led to this. The stolen money, the favoritism, the years of abuse. The women Dylan had hurt while my parents protected him. The family I'd lost, and the family I'd found. Whatever happened next, I'd already won. I'd broken the cycle. I'd chosen justice over blood, truth over comfort. Even if it cost me everything, it was worth it. To see Dylan finally face consequences. The prosecutor stood to make her opening statement. And I settled in for the most important day of my life. The truth was about to come out. All of it. And there was nothing my parents' money or influence could do to stop it. The prosecutor's opening statement hit like a sledgehammer. She laid out Dylan's predatory pattern, spanning years, methodically presenting evidence of systematic coercion and blackmail. I watched my parents' faces crumble as she described victim after victim, each story eerily similar to Jane's. Dylan's lead attorney countered exactly as we'd expected, painting me as a bitter, jealous brother orchestrating an elaborate revenge scheme. He claimed the women were either lying for attention or manipulated by me into false memories. The way he twisted facts made my skin crawl. Catherine was the first witness. She took the stand with steady determination, recounting how Dylan had pursued her, love-bombing her with expensive gifts and constant attention. She described finding my message, confronting Dylan, and his explosive reaction. During cross-examination, his lawyer grilled her about our coffee shop meeting, suggesting I'd coached her testimony. Catherine held firm, producing her own documentation, texts from Dylan threatening to destroy her if she testified, photos of bruises from when he grabbed her arm. Jane testified next, walking past me to the stand, her chin high despite visible trembling. She detailed the months of harassment, the escalating threats, the fear that had paralyzed her. When the prosecutor displayed the screenshots of Dylan's messages, several jury members visibly recoiled. The defense attorney attacked Jane's credibility ruthlessly, questioning why she'd stayed silent so long, why she'd given me evidence only after our breakup. He implied she was a scorned woman seeking revenge through me. Jane broke down, but managed to explain how Dylan had convinced her no one would ever believe her over him. Amy's testimony was devastating. The woman who'd approached me at work revealed Dylan had targeted her when she was just 15, and he was 16. She'd never reported it because he'd threatened to circulate explicit photos he'd coerced from her. Those photos, she revealed, were how he'd maintained control over multiple victims, threatening exposure if they spoke out. The prosecutor presented evidence of a hidden cloud storage account belonging to Dylan, containing compromising images of at least 12 different women, dating back years. My parents' shock seemed genuine for the first time. My mother gasped when the prosecutor revealed some victims were underage when Dylan had targeted them. Detective Sarah Park testified about the investigation, presenting a meticulous timeline of Dylan's activities constructed from digital evidence, witness statements, and pattern analysis. She explained how Dylan had refined his methods, learning to avoid direct evidence while maintaining psychological control. During a recess, I overheard my father arguing with Dylan's lawyers. He was demanding to know why they hadn't warned him about the extent of the evidence. The lead attorney's response was telling. They'd tried, but my parents had refused to believe their golden child capable of such systematic cruelty. The afternoon brought more victims. Melissa described how Dylan had pursued her relentlessly during her freshman year of college, showing up at her dorm, her classes, her job, until she agreed to date him. Another victim, Rachel, revealed Dylan had hacked her social media accounts when she tried to break up with him, posting humiliating content that cost her a scholarship. She'd been too ashamed to report it. The prosecution's final witness was Patricia, who had come forward just weeks before. She was composed, but clearly struggling as she described how 16-year-old Dylan had threatened her younger sister to maintain control. She'd carried that secret for over a decade. Her testimony established a pattern going back years. This wasn't a phase. It was who Dylan fundamentally was. When Dylan took the stand, his carefully constructed image crumbled quickly. The prosecutor's cross-examination exposed contradiction after contradiction. He claimed the women had pursued him, that any explicit images were sent voluntarily, that he'd never threatened anyone. But when confronted with his own messages, his explanations became increasingly implausible. The moment that sealed his fate came when the prosecutor asked about a specific threat he'd sent Jane. Dylan smirked, saying she'd misunderstood his humor. That smirk, captured by the courtroom artist, would later appear in every news story. My turn to testify came on day 3. I'd prepared extensively, but sitting in that witness box, facing my brother across the courtroom, felt surreal. I recounted our childhood, the favoritism, the escalating behavior our parents enabled. I described discovering Jane with Dylan, her revelation about the blackmail, my decision to expose him. Dylan's lawyer tried to portray me as bitter and vindictive, bringing up every childhood fight, every complaint I'd made about unfair treatment. I stayed calm, acknowledging the resentment, but emphasizing that protecting future victims had motivated me, not revenge. When asked about the harassment I'd faced after sending Catherine the evidence, I produced documentation of everything. The false complaints, the slashed tires, the break-in, the threatening messages. The jury saw a clear pattern of retaliation that matched Dylan's established behavior. The prosecution's closing argument was masterful. She walked the jury through years of predatory behavior, enabled by wealth and privilege, protected by parents who refused to see the truth. She emphasized Dylan had shown no remorse, taken no responsibility, and would continue hurting women if not stopped. The defense's closing felt desperate. They attacked victims' credibility, suggested a conspiracy, blamed me for everything. But they couldn't explain away the evidence. The messages. The photos. The consistent pattern across years and multiple victims. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. As we filed back into the courtroom, I saw my parents. No longer confident, dismissive. They looked broken. Finally forced to confront who their favorite son really was. The verdict came down like a hammer, guilty on all counts. Multiple charges of blackmail, coercion, harassment, possession of explicit images of minors, and witness intimidation. Dylan's face went white as each guilty verdict was read. For the first time in his life, his actions had consequences our parents couldn't buy him out of. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Dylan was remanded into custody immediately, his bail revoked due to the witness intimidation charge. As officers led him away in handcuffs, he looked at our parents desperately. My mother was sobbing. My father just stared at the floor. Outside, victims and supporters gathered. Catherine organized an impromptu press conference where several women spoke about finding their voices, about the importance of believing victims, about breaking cycles of abuse. I stood in the background, overwhelmed by their courage. Jane found me afterward. We sat on the courthouse steps, watching the media circus wind down. She thanked me again for pursuing justice, for giving her and the others a chance to be heard. We hugged goodbye, both of us finally able to move forward. The next weeks brought unexpected developments. 3 more victims came forward after seeing trial coverage, adding their stories to the public record. A prominent women's rights organization announced they were funding a civil suit against my parents for enabling Dylan's behavior. Nicholas welcomed me back to work with a raise, saying my integrity had impressed corporate. My coworkers, who'd followed the trial, treated me with new respect. The hardware store became a refuge where I could focus on simple tasks while processing everything. Catherine started a support group for survivors, using her experience to help others. She asked me to speak at one meeting about recognizing enabling behavior in families. The room was packed with people who'd lived through similar dynamics. My parents attempted contact one more time before sentencing. They showed up at my apartment unannounced, looking haggard, years older. My father, who'd always been the enforcer of their will, seemed diminished. My mother's usual perfect appearance was gone, replaced by hollow eyes and trembling hands. They didn't apologize, couldn't bring themselves to admit full culpability. Instead, they asked if I was satisfied, if I'd gotten what I wanted by destroying our family. I told them Dylan had destroyed our family years ago. I just stopped enabling the destruction. They left without another word. I knew it was the last time I'd see them. Sentencing day. Another packed courtroom. The judge had reviewed victim impact statements from all 12 women who'd testified, plus 3 who'd come forward after trial. Dylan stood as the judge detailed the harm he'd caused, the lives he'd disrupted, the trust he'd shattered. 25 years. The number rang through the courtroom like a bell. 25 years for the golden boy who'd never faced a consequence. My mother's wail echoed off the walls. My father had to physically support her as they left. Dylan was led away without looking back. No more smirks. No more confidence. Just a hollow-eyed acceptance that his reign of terror was over. The women he'd victimized could finally stop looking over their shoulders, stop fearing his retaliation. That evening, I met Nicholas for dinner. He'd become more than a boss, a mentor, a father figure, someone who'd shown me what actual family support looked like. We talked about work, about moving forward, about building something positive from the wreckage. A week later, I signed a lease on a new apartment. The old place held too many memories, too much pain. As I packed, I found a photo from years ago. My family at Dylan's high school graduation. We looked perfect. All lies. I threw it away. My new place was smaller, but safer, with better security. Catherine helped me move, bringing some of the other survivors. We turned it into a celebration of new beginnings, of freedom. The hardware store promoted me to assistant manager, recognizing my dedication. I threw myself into learning the business side, taking night classes. Work became more than survival. It became a career path, a future I was building on my own terms. 3 months after the trial, Jane sent me a wedding invitation. She'd found someone who treated her with respect and love. Her note said testifying had freed her to trust again, to believe she deserved happiness. I sent back my acceptance immediately. The civil suit against my parents proceeded. They hired new lawyers, tried to claim ignorance. But the prosecution had evidence of complaints they'd dismissed, victims they'd paid off or threatened. Their fortune was being dismantled piece by piece. I started volunteering with Catherine's support group, sharing my story. So many people carried guilt about not stopping their relatives sooner. We learned that breaking toxic family loyalty wasn't betrayal. It was necessary. 6 months after Dylan's sentencing, a letter forwarded from my old address. No return label, but his handwriting. Dylan had written from prison. Not to apologize, but to blame me. For ruining his life. He claimed I'd poisoned the women, that I'd orchestrated everything out of jealousy. Even behind bars, he couldn't accept responsibility. I gave the letter to Detective Park. She told me he'd been disciplined multiple times in prison for harassment and manipulation attempts. Some patterns, apparently, were too ingrained to break. My life settled into new rhythms. Work, volunteer meetings, night classes, building friendships with people who knew my whole story and supported me anyway. The family I'd lost had been replaced by something stronger. Chosen connections based on mutual respect and shared values. The hardware store became known as a safe place to work, Nicholas creating policies to protect employees. My story had inspired him. A year after the trial, local news did a follow-up. 7 of Dylan's victims agreed to be interviewed about their healing journey. They spoke about reclaiming their lives, the power of being believed, moving forward while acknowledging the scars. I watched, proud of their strength. My parents' house went up for sale, proceeds earmarked for victim restitution. They'd moved to a small condo, their social status destroyed, their golden child imprisoned, their abandoned son thriving. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Catherine graduated law school, immediately began working with abuse survivors. We remained close friends, bonded by shared trauma transformed into purpose. The 2nd anniversary of Dylan's arrest passed quietly. I was managing my own hardware store by then, Nicholas having helped me secure a business loan. The grand opening drew crowds, including many of the women Dylan had hurt. They came to support someone who'd risked everything to stop a predator. Life wasn't perfect. Some nights I still woke up anxious, remembering the harassment, the break-in, the years of gaslighting. But therapy helped. So did the community I'd built, the chosen family who showed up for Sunday dinners, who celebrated my victories and supported me through setbacks. Dylan would be eligible for parole in 15 years, with good behavior. But his prison record suggested that wouldn't happen. He'd already faced additional charges for contraband and intimidation attempts. The golden boy who'd never heard no was learning consequences the hard way. I kept one photo from my old life. Not of my family, but of 18-year-old me, the day I moved out. Scared but determined. Escaping a toxic home without knowing what lay ahead. I wished I could tell that kid he'd made the right choice. That freedom was worth the pain. That chosen family would fill the void. My phone buzzed with a text from Nicholas, inviting me to dinner with his family. His grandkids called me Uncle Kai now, including me in their drawings and school projects. This was what family should be. Supportive, honest, protective of each other without enabling harm. As I locked up my store that evening, I felt the satisfaction of honest work, of building something positive from the ashes of my old life. The boy who'd been blamed for his brother's crimes had become a man who stood for justice. The family who'd rejected me had been replaced by people who valued truth over blood. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink as I drove to Nicholas's house. In the passenger seat sat a pie I bought from Catherine's mother's bakery. She'd become another unexpected addition to my chosen family. These connections, forged through trial and triumph, meant more than DNA ever could. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities. But tonight was for family dinner. With people who'd earned that title through actions, not accidents of birth. As I parked, hearing children's laughter through the windows, I knew I'd found where I belonged. So, here's my question for you. When faced with betrayal from your own blood and the chance to finally bring justice, what would you have risked?